Hello, my name is Pastor AJ Johnson. I'm the senior pastor of Urban Hope Refuge Church and a community organizer for the Center for Leadership and Justice. This is my colleague, the amazing Cori Mackey, the director of the Center for Leadership and Justice. Together with a team of organizers in 38 faith-based institutions, we organize for justice in our region through the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance. We are grateful for the invitation to be with you today. We want to start our time together with our personal stories, which play out in two predictably different ways based on the color of our skin. She's white, I'm black. I'm here to talk to you about my experience, not growing up in the hood or ghetto, but growing up in a white suburb called Rocky Hill with my father and mother, who are well-educated people with doctorate degrees. See, my father decided to relocate our family from Bronx, New York City to fulfill a pastoral call in Hartford's North End, out of all places, by the way. I was 8 years old at the time, and my brother was entering his senior year of high school. My parents decided that schools in Rocky Hill would be the best match for me to learn and grow.
I spent the first 16 years of my life growing up in rural Vermont and rural New York, living on dirt roads and attending very small schools, with parents who had only a high school education. My family moved to Toledo, Ohio. I was 16 years old and going into my junior year of high school. My mom and I went to the Toledo Public High School that was near my house to register. All of the staff was Black. The buildings were big. We turned around and left without taking any of the registration paperwork. My mom decided that Toledo Public Schools were not safe enough for me.
As you can imagine, I was in schools with only white teachers. Most of the Black kids in the school, including me, were being referred to special education. They said it was due to our lack of learning ability. Parent-teacher meetings became more about my behavior. I was kind of a class clown a little bit, and what medication to put me on, and less about my ability and talents.
My mom drove me down the street and to another neighborhood, to a private college prep school, Notre Dame Academy. We had no money. My parents were on the brink of and eventually filed for bankruptcy. My mom and I entered the school filled with white teachers and white administrators. My mom went into the principal's office and came out some time later. I started school there the next week, a school that cost over $30,000 a year. They told us not to worry about the money at that time.
She got a great deal. The attitude toward my skin color traveled with me to high school. My guidance counselor during my senior year bragged about how proud he was of his son being accepted in an Ivy League school, but then had the nerve to tell me that with my grades and economic status, that I should aim lower.
My junior year, I told my guidance counselors I wasn't ready for college and wanted a break after high school. The truth is, my mom didn't really know how to navigate the college search process, nor did we have the resources to do so. A few weeks later, one of my teachers was driving me to Cleveland, Ohio, then to Cincinnati, then to Dayton for college visits. I graduated from college having had numerous financial interventions as a result of my high school network, and of course, the color of my skin.
Today, I'm married to my supermodel wife, Melinda Johnson. She is the program director at the YWCA. But we are worried sick about our sons and where they will go to school and what they will experience. They attend a daycare at a great facility where the staff is predominantly people of color and the curriculum is one we believe in. However, they go for walks on the streets and the teachers have to worry about gun violence, trash, and unsafe streets. Our choice was that was that or a predominantly white daycare setting where they would undoubtedly suffer the effects of racism?
Today, I have 3 kids. When my youngest was about to start kindergarten, my former wife and I lived in Bloomfield, where the school district was 99% students of color. We were both deeply engaged in justice work and committed to addressing our own white privilege. However, suddenly my wife's commute to Central Connecticut State University became too strenuous for our family. The school we thought we would send our kids to in Bloomfield closed, and we began to wonder if Bloomfield schools would be safe enough for our queer family. So we decided to move. We moved to Newington. We convinced ourselves we did this for all the reasons I just stated. Deep down, I don't believe it. We made this choice because we are so inextricably connected to, addicted to, benefit from, and participate in white privilege that we can justify almost anything to keep our privilege and power intact, even when our entire professional lives aim to end racism and white supremacy. So where do we go from here?
I'll tell you. Dr. King said in his speech, so where do we go from here? That we must first honestly recognize where we are right now. When the Constitution was written, a strange formula to determine taxes and representation declared that the Negro was 60% of a person. Today, another curious formula seems to declare that he is 50% of a person. Of the good things in life, the Negro has approximately half of those of whites. Of the bad things of life, he has twice those of whites. Dr. King goes on to list statistics that paint a stark reality between the privileges and outcomes of white and Black folks in the areas of housing, income, unemployment, mortality rates, death by violence, and segregated schools. He was speaking in 1967, but he could deliver that same speech right here today in 2021. We must first honestly recognize where we are. This is the America that we live in. If you watched any news of this past week, you know exactly where we are. We are living in a deeply racist, white supremacist country. And I might suggest that some of us feel a good amount of righteous indignation pointing at those fascist, bigoted, racist Trump supporters who mounted an attempted a coup in our nation's capital.
It's like after the murder of George Floyd. For some reason, us white folks were called to greater attention. We gathered for marches. We went out of our way to get Black Lives Matter signs and Black Lives Matter face masks. We perhaps stepped up our progressive political action. But let's be really honest about where we are. Would you send your kids to school in Hartford's North End? If not, why aren't you outraged by that? Would you rent an apartment in Frog Hollow neighborhood of Hartford? If not, why aren't you outraged? Would you not do that maybe because you know that the life expectancy of youth born in Frog Hollow is 12 years less than those of kids born in West Hartford? Does that not enrage each and every one of us? Does it matter to you and to me that our kids had a meticulous, well-funded, well-communicated, highly effective plan for the reopening of schools during COVID that allowed them to go back safely and us to feel confident? Does it matter to us that that's not the case in our urban cities throughout Connecticut? Do your kids' lives matter? Do my kids' lives matter more than the kids a mile down the street? Does it matter that West Hartford has zoning laws, housing prices, patterns of development that are rooted in years of institutionalized racism that are simply accepted as the way it is? Why aren't we working tirelessly to dismantle the vicious disparities that exist between the area of Blue Black Square and that of Unity Plaza in Hartford's North End.
Mm-hmm.
There is no justification for the disparity between Hartford and West Hartford. There is nothing sacred or mysterious about why the quality of the sidewalks, street conditions, school outcomes, and housing segregation changes the minute you cross from one side of Prospect Street to the other on Farmington Avenue. One short hop and a skip is the difference of years of life expectancy between kids born literally on different sides of the street. There is nothing confusing or mysterious about this. There is an identifiable pattern of development rooted in racism that got us to where we are today. Until we claim that, reckon with that, and take steps to undo it, gatherings like this on MLK Day will be an insult to MLK and all people of color. So where do we go from here? We take action for racial justice. We do something that has risk, that challenges our own power and privilege, and that seeks to shift the power structure of our state. There are many ways of engaging in this work, but we offer you 4 concrete opportunities today. To change the power in the state, we need to organize, and we are organizing through GIA, the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance. Here are 4 of the issues we are working on that you can support.
Today, as you're watching this, when you get done seeing this, I need you to do one thing. I need you to call, write, or text Governor Ned Lamont and demand he declare racism a public health crisis in this state. I have to tell you, he has been silent on these issues of racism. He has refused to engage with the faith leaders of color on this topic. This is important because after the death of George Floyd and after the riots at the Capitol, we have to draw the line in the sand. We must declare racism a public health crisis.
On the topic of education, we are so pleased that West Hartford is one of 10 school districts in Greater Hartford that committed to GIA's request to provide anti-racism training to all faculty and staff throughout the district. However, we know that is not enough for the long term. We must become enraged by how our schools are funded and at the stark disparities between our districts. We are organizing to change this. Join with GIA and other groups like Faith Acts to the long-term journey of transforming the inequitable funding structures that contribute to the disparities in our public school system.
Join us in a fight to pass clean slate legislation. We will be working with leaders from across the state to pass a bill that provides automatic expungement for people with eligible misdemeanors and felonies after a set of period of time to address the horrific racist effects of mass incarceration. Please, please join us in this fight.
Finally, if you want to take steps to fight for racial justice, join us right now to end welfare liens. The state of Connecticut is only one of 2 states in the entire country that force people who have received state assistance at any point in their life to pay it back when they come into money, disproportionately affecting people of color. This legislative session, there will be a bill introduced to repeal this law, and you can voice your support to your legislators to make this happen. Here is a video that explains the issue in more detail.
Hello, this is Pastor Trevor Buford, Union Baptist Church of Hartford. The state of Connecticut has the second largest income gap between its richest citizens and its poorest citizens. And to make matters worse, it extricates millions of dollars from its poorest citizens just as they're attempting to climb themselves out of poverty. And they do this through the act of welfare liens. Welfare liens is a lifelong debt that Connecticut places on any person who's ever received public assistance. And they attempt to collect this debt just as they're coming out of poverty and changing their lives. The reason they exist is because many state legislators do not know this is a common practice. If they did, they would know that this immoral act must end. And here's why.
I had went through hardship and I couldn't maintain the mortgage. And on 2018, I received a letter from the state saying that I owe over $140,000. And they had put a lien on my house. I did not know it was a lien on my house until I had to go to court.
E.C. Greenwood was a first-time homebuyer in 2005, and owning a home had been her dream for many years. She was in foreclosure and was able to work out with her mortgage company a loan modification which would have restructured her debt and gotten her caught back up on the mortgage. However, she also had a welfare lien on the property. And in her case, the state absolutely refused to negotiate with her. And as a result, there wasn't a way out for her from foreclosure, and she ended up losing her home.
I tried to make a better life for my children and I. I was homeless. My kids, we all got, one went there, everyone broke up. We all went all separate ways.
In the state of Connecticut, we are one of only 2 states in the country that place a lifelong lien on welfare recipients.
My name is Daniel Okendo, and I'm a dad of 4. I was a teen father, and I worked my way through college in the early 90s with some assistance from the state, medical, cash assistance, and food stamps for me and my kids, all while working myself.
Daniel had purchased a home in Windham, Connecticut after many years of working, and was hoping that it would be a place where his kids could grow up and that he'd have something to give to them and, would be building some assets. Unfortunately, he ran into some problems and temporarily lost his job and fell behind on his mortgage payment. But the good news was that he got a job fairly quickly, and his mortgage company offered him a loan modification, which would restructure the debt and get him caught back up. He found out that the state had put a $45,000 lien on his property for the benefits he'd received 20, 30 years ago as a teen father.
So come to find out, I don't have any equity in the home because basically they want their money back. The state wants their money back, which I would gladly give back if I won the Powerball.
For him to get the loan modification that he already qualified for, the state wanted him to pay off the whole welfare lien, $45,000. He tried negotiating with the state, but they still wanted $25,000, which was much more than he had saved and more than he was behind on his mortgage.
And if it wasn't for Sarah White and her agency, I would have lost my home. And to them, I'm grateful. And because of that, I'm here. And it wasn't until Sarah White spoke with me and told me that, I wasn't the only one on that same boat. And I was amazed. I thought, I just felt like I was picked randomly out of a hat. It's sort of like drowning at the edge of the water after I've swam, 20 years, and then I reached the shore and I drowned. You know what I mean? It just didn't make sense that there would be no equity, no home, and all because of this lien.
I recall putting together a funeral arrangement for a family. The deceased actually owed the state money for some reason. I think that they were on assistance at some point in their life, and the state wanted their money. Healthcare, cash, food stamps. If the state has given you any kind of assistance, then you have this bill. You have this bill with the state, and the state will collect that at all costs, even in death.
If they had called the ambulance, if they had transported Connie to the hospital emergency room for a blood transfusion, she would be alive today. This is the only way healthcare centers will change, if they knew they had to answer to the law. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
Dr. King said in his speech that as we talk about where to go from here, we must honestly face the fact that the movement must address itself to the question of restructuring the whole of American society. If we think a Black Lives Matter sign, yearly attendance at an MLK service, a good vote, or belonging to a congregation that doesn't go beyond charity is what we are called to do, then we need to think again. This country needs restructuring. This town needs restructuring. This region needs restructuring. We white people need to show up and be allies in a radical transformation that shifts who has and who wields power in this state and, yes, in this town. Until we do that, we have nowhere to go from here but into greater depths of denial about the state of white supremacy in this country. That is a direction, as we saw last week, that has life and death consequences. We might not be the ones storming the Capitol, but our silent complicity around the fact that kids who live a mile away have shorter life expectancy than our suburban kids shortens the distance between those insurgents and us. So where do I go from here today as a white woman? I know that I have failed over and over again in dismantling racism and white supremacy. And I know that I will fail again. But I must take action. We must take action. For the greatest failure is to proclaim that Black lives matter while doing nothing to actually defend those lives.
So you're probably still asking yourself, where do we go from here? Dr. King said, the time is always right to do what is right. We invite you to join us on this journey of justice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cori, and